Peter the Doocy from Fox News asked Karine Jean-Pierre, when is she going to tone down the rhetoric? Because in the White House press briefing, she actually referred to Donald Trump as a threat. So when it came time for Peter Doocy to ask KJP his question, here's what he said.
Thank you, Karine. It's been only 2 days since somebody allegedly tried to kill Donald Trump again. And you're here at the podium in the White House briefing room calling him a threat. How many more assassination attempts on Donald Trump until the president and the vice president and you pick a different word to describe Trump other than threat?
Peter Doocy looking at Karine Jean-Pierre flat out and saying, look, it was 2 days ago, not even, that Donald Trump was the victim of another attempted assassination. Luckily, he's fine. But when are you and the vice president and the president, when is the White House going to stop referring to him as a threat? And she did not like that question.
I actually completely disagree with the premise of your question, the question that you're asking. It is also incredibly dangerous in the way that you're asking it because American people are watching. And to say that from an administration who has consistently condemned political violence, from an administration where the president called the former president and was thankful, grateful that he was okay, from an administration who has called out January 6th, called out the attack of Paul Pelosi, called out and said we need to lower the temperature after the Butler incident, and now for you to make that kind of comment in your question, because your question involved a comment and a statement.
I don't know what that means. Your question involved a comment and a statement. Isn't that what most questions? That's a question. Let me make a statement and then let me comment on it and let me get your question. It doesn't matter. She's trying to turn it around on him. She's doing what the Democrats always do. This is right out of Sun Tzu. This is right out of Rules for Radicals. Accuse your enemy of that which you yourself are guilty. Peter Doocy looks at her and says, look, you just called Donald Trump a threat, and Kamala Harris has called him a threat, and Joe Biden has called him a threat, and this White House continues to call him a threat, and people are trying to kill him. When are you going to stop calling him a threat? And she turns around and goes, Peter, that question is dangerous. Don't you know people are watching? That is a dangerous question. You know what you're doing, Peter? You are putting Donald Trump's life in danger by asking me when I'm going to stop calling him a threat. There's people watching. When they colluded with Russia, they accused Donald Trump of colluding with Russia. They went so far as to impeach him for colluding with Russia, when all along it was Hillary Clinton and her campaign who colluded with Russia. When they talked about Donald Trump stealing top secret documents from the White House, it was actually Joe Biden who was in possession of top secret documents from the White House, which he had no right to, because he was just the vice president and not the president, who had the right to declassify any documents for any reason at any time. When they talked about election interference, it was actually Barack Obama who interfered in the election when he was bugging, using FISA warrants, the Donald Trump campaign headquarters at Trump Tower. So a lot of, it's the same thing again. And now when Peter Doocy says, hey, lady, when are you going to stop referring to Donald Trump as a threat? When are you going to stop putting his life in danger by using these inflammatory remarks? She goes, Peter, how dare you ask me that? Don't you know that's dangerous? That was actually the whole that was the whole point of the question. He didn't let her go. He followed up.
There are people watching at home who might miss the part where you say, let's lower the temperature. And there are mentally unstable people who are attempting to kill political candidates, attempting to kill Donald Trump, and they are still hearing this White House refer to him as a threat. Is there no concern that people are taking that literally?
We're using examples. We're not just saying that just to say it. January 6th, Peter. January 6th. Wait, January 6th. How many times do we have to? January 6th, 2021.
She says it like 3 times. It's like she thinks if she says January 6th enough times, it'll appear, like Beetlejuice. January 6th, January 6th, January 6th.
January 6th, Peter. January 6th. Wait, January 6th. How many times do we have to? January 6th, 2021. Beetlejuice, which is ironic because a lot. Yeah, well, never mind. But I've just seen there've been memes of the two of them, and they're comparing.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is, she goes back to January 6th. She goes, how many times have we called out political violence? How many times have we called out January 6th? How many times have we called out the attack on Paul Pelosi? Which, by the way, was the attack on Paul Pelosi confirmed to be political violence? I don't feel like it was. I thought there was always something else going on there that was never really explained. I feel like they throw that in there with political violence because Paul Pelosi happens to be married to Nancy Pelosi, who is a politician, but I don't know that that constitutes political violence. But I digress. It's all about January 6th. It's all about making sure that people realize that no matter how many attempts there are on Donald Trump's life, he is still the most violent, and he is still the most angry, and he's still the biggest threat, and he's still the person who, if Donald Trump's been shot in the face. We had a guy camp out for 12 hours with a long gun who wanted to shoot Donald Trump, and thank God the Secret Service was able to stop it. There have been God knows how many attempts that never even happened. God knows how many people who tried and maybe failed or backed out. There have been so many, and how many are in the future? That's the other thing we need to be worried about. There have been 2 attempts on Donald Trump's life, 0 on Kamala Harris's and 0 on Joe Biden's. Yet the folks at the White House and Karine Jean-Pierre want you to believe that the political violence comes from the right, that January 6th, which was a peaceful and patriotic protest until it wasn't, but all Donald Trump said was, hey, go to the Capitol, make your voices peacefully and patriotically heard. That's the part they always leave out. Don Jr. was on Fox News with Jesse Waters, and he said, this is such an epidemic with the left. They are so enraged by Donald Trump getting shot, but they're enraged with Donald Trump. They took this second assassination attempt where he wasn't shot, but there was a shooter. There was an alleged gunman who was ready, willing, and able to do it. Got within 300 or 500 yards of Donald Trump while he was golfing. Still not really sure how he knew he was golfing since it was a last-minute trip, but we may never know the answer to that question. Hopefully this guy stays alive long enough for us to get some answers. But Don Jr.'s out there saying, look, they think that my father, Donald Trump, is responsible for these attempts on his own life.
I'm waiting for Merrick Garland to indict my father for being part of an assassination. That's what's next.
It's a conspiracy.
Nothing would surprise me at this point. Yeah, he's part of the conspiracy. He may be the intended target, but they're going to try to throw him in jail for that anyway because they can't stop him in any other ways.
The Department of Justice has done an investigation, and we are indicting Donald Trump for conspiracy to assassinate Donald Trump. That's it. I wouldn't be shocked at all. Don Jr. is 100% right. It's only a matter of time. The left has ratcheted up the political rhetoric. They have called Donald Trump a threat. I don't even have it anymore. I'll play the video later today before we leave. But they've called him over and over again a threat to democracy, an existential threat to democracy, a threat to our state. Dan Goldman said he must be eliminated. What's his name? The guy from the Lincoln Project, Rick Wilson, said they've got to still put a bullet in Donald Trump. Over and over again, they've talked about how horrible he is, what a threat he is, how he's going to destroy this country, and how somebody's got to do something about it. And then when a couple of people try, they look at Donald Trump and go, oh my God, Donald Trump brought this on himself. They are now at the White House still continuing to call him a threat. Don Jr. is saying it's going to go all the way to the DOJ. And Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is on the phone with the White House. He's demanding that they take action, that they beef up Donald Trump's security. He's saying there's been not one but 2 attempts on his life now. He's the most threatened person in the world. He's the person whose life is most at risk. He should be the person who gets the most protection. This was him on Newsmax.
There are reports out there this morning, Mr. Speaker, that you contacted the White House yesterday to ask why Donald Trump's protection detail hasn't been beefed up. Are those reports true?
Absolutely. I called the White House directly and I demanded that President Trump get the same level of protection that the sitting president has. He's under so much threat, more than anybody, probably in the modern era, if ever. We have to make sure that the Secret Service is getting the job done. And if they have a personnel problem and we need to supplement it with local and state law enforcement, let's do that. If Congress needs to add a little bit more funding, let's do that. Whatever it takes, get the job done and protect President Trump, for crying out loud.
For crying out, Mike Johnson, I don't really see him as the demanding to, like, how does that phone call to the White House go? Hello, this is Speaker Mike Johnson. I demand that Donald Trump have beefed up security. No. Dadgummit. For crying out loud, I demand it. I don't see him as I don't see him as like a real forceful Karen. You know, like when I get angry, I'll be honest with you, I can go full Karen on a brother. I've gone to my kid's school and yelled at principals. I've gone to the car dealership, wherever it happens to be. I can pull some angry Karen energy or Kevin energy, whatever it is. Mike Johnson, I don't think he's got it in him. I don't have a lot of faith in him calling the White House and demanding anything and getting it. But he is right that, I mean, think about who gets Secret Service protection. Joe Biden gets Secret Service protection. What is Joe Biden even doing? Joe Biden is probably the least threatening person at the moment. I don't think anybody has their sights trained on Joe Biden anymore. It used to be the president had to be protected at all costs. Now, people even forget he's the president. If there's a foreign adversary or if there's some kind of domestic terror unit that wants to take over the country, they're probably like, we got to go after Kamala, we got to go after Trump. And then someone's like, excuse me, actually Joe Biden's the president. Oh, right. But Donald Trump, who's not even an elected official, citizen Donald Trump is so powerful. He is the biggest threat to any and all of the enemies of the United States, foreign and domestic. And if you don't believe me, just look at the number of assassination attempts that he's had on his life in the past 3 months. Fun fact, it's 200% more than anyone else running for office.